Morning. Morning. Morning, everybody. Hey, MJ. That's in my please put on your actual name so that you're marked present. Good morning, everybody. Let's all just stretch it out a minute or two, make sure everybody can get in. Again, if your camera is not on, please have a good reason for it. And in either case, do be sure that your real name is on. So initials are not good. All right, I take attendance through the screenshot, and I really don't have the time to go figuring out who you are. Hello, MJ, can you change your name? Right,
Yeah, I will.
put in your real name. Great. Well, good morning, everybody. So let me tell you where we're headed on this. We're going to wrap up the third project and then start the grand finale, which I'm kind of excited about. Um, so we're going to get a look at the handout right now. I want to make sure that everybody's work is in the Google Drive. I'm still letting people in, so I'm keeping my eye on that just before I start screen sharing. Gotcha. You got 1 second there. All right. Does look like everybody's here. Let me get right to the handout. Okay. I don't have any new general announcements for you. I know I've mentioned, I believe the last couple of weeks, the option of tutoring. Tutoring's available. I've heard good things about it. If you do feel like you need more time with someone who knows Adobe Illustrator specifically, please check out this link and make an appointment for yourself. It's a very it's a great opportunity. More people in. All right. I don't really need to remind you guys about revisions. If you were not happy with your grades on the last project, they are all up on Blackboard. You should consider giving me a revision. I want to say really quickly, I'm strict about deadlines. And if a person misses a deadline, they need to be approved to give me the work late. So if you miss a deadline, please reach out to me. Don't assume that I'm going to accept it. Uh, Let me know that you've got an issue. You could surely let me know at the end of class, or you could send me an email right away. And that's about project three. If you're still late for earlier projects, you're in an emergency situation, you need to talk to me. I'm a reasonable guy, so the best way to approach a situation like that is to communicate. All right. So what we're really here for right now is two things. One's larger, I should say, than the other. One is to get a look, see what these projects look like, the actual final versions right now. And I'm going to be, approaching things like, does it feel professional? By the way, that is such a strange kind of question because I know of all kinds of very well known, wonderful, and successful artists whose work is so quirky and so odd uh, that I don't think people thought they looked professional at first, uh, but they had something else going and created real opportunity for themselves in their work. And now it's easy to look at those artists. Charlie Brown, when Charlie Brown first came out, it looked anything but professional. I've seen that early work and talked to somebody who turned down the artist for Charlie Brown. But yet it's a feeling thing. And that's why I chose the word feel. Does it feel professional? Does it communicate? The objects feel and detail. Some of you guys had wonderful, it's funny. I had one I wanted to show you that I didn't put in the samples. I just bumped into it the other day. Someone for this project did a honey jar, but it's a common one you see in the stores. It's plastic. It looks like a bear. So it looks at first like a figure of a toy bear, but it's got the angles. But more interestingly, the light on in a transparent plastic jar with honey in it was complicated and beautiful. So sometimes it's really all about texture. Other times it's about other elements of how an object feels, right? What elements work best, etc. What could be improved. So we're going to be looking at that any minute because I want to make sure I spend most of today's class talking about your work. Listen, we're going to come back to this later, right? So I want to make a big deal about this now. I just want to say something really kind of quick. 1 second. So we only have one more project this semester. I think in many ways it's going to be easier than this project because it's easier technically. Technically, it's harder in terms of your imagination. So I would have to put it this way. I feel like the first project was the easiest. It was a challenge. It was all new to you. And I got a lot of professional looking work from that first project. The letters project, the letter words. The last project where we were trying to describe a set of steps was harder conceptually, but not technically. Frankly, that project, the project before this one, the techniques were not that more elaborate. The demands were not more elaborate. What was difficult was the thinking. How do I tell someone how to, make an omelet or whatever it was? So conceptually, this is the hardest technically. It really had very little conceptual meat on the bones, but technically this one was the challenge. The next one's going back to a conceptual challenge. So I'm looking forward to talking to you more about your reinvented cities. What's coming up? All right. Let me just see. All right, let me get a look in, just see how we're doing in there. It looks like just about everybody's well represented. I guess I just want to say one more thing because it got a little vague. I'd offered more than one way to actually show me work, during this project. Right now, I wanted Illustrator files. Some people gave me backups of JPEGs or PDFs because they were afraid of issues, them being too large or whatever. So I appreciate anyone who's thinking out of the box that way. I'm focusing mostly on the Illustrator files. If there's any kind of issue comes along with that kind of technicality, please let me know. Just turn on your mic, let me know. I'll work with you. All right. So let me get right inside our Google Drive. And we're going to start at the top. I just want to introduce one quick idea before we start looking. So hear me out on this one. I honestly believe the most important part of your entire college career is going to be the critiques. For one, they take the most energy. When someone's talking about your work, it's kind of, easy to respond. But when there's 20-something people in a class, it's really hard to look attentively at all 25 people, hear what the teacher has to say or what your colleagues have to say. It's really, really hard. I went to school forever, by the way. I have my undergrad degree from the School of Visual Arts. It's virtually a parallel program to this one, right? And frankly, techniques came and went. They really did. I mean, frankly, if you learned oil paint and then later on you got excited about acrylic, okay, you took some of the knowledge with you and the other, some of the other stuff just changed. Maybe you went all digital. Maybe we're all fired up about Illustrator, I hope. But, an Illustrator has had no serious competition for a long time. But that doesn't mean that it won't eventually be dethroned. So in the end, it's concepts and vision. It's always about concepts and vision, concepts and vision. Everybody could learn technique. All you need is willpower to learn technique. Concepts and vision are a whole other thing. So this project, I realize, is more about vision than concepts. Let's get started, though. Do your best to stay, on point with me. I'm opening up this PNG. Robin, I think you did a great job. Robin sent me an email, asking me just a little bit about the design and the background, which I only got to a little bit before class. So you probably haven't even read it. Um, Guys, what do you guys think of this? I mean, if any, are you impressed? If you're impressed, let me know. Really, how could one not be impressed by this? I don't really have much to say to her other than it's dead on. I want to point out a couple things just in case they're less than obvious. What is obvious is the rendering. We love that word in art school, rendering, rendering. So, you could draw an object, think in line, and that's wonderful, but that's not rendering. Rendering is when you're including light, shadow, or texture, surface qualities, all of that to render an object, makes it dimensional, make it tactile, like you could touch it. This is very tactical. This has clearly got all the wood grain you'd expect from a traditional guitar. It's uh, the material that the guitar is made of is evident. That's really nice. But I got to tell you what I like best about this one. She found a way to design it. The design looks terrific. The custom angle does a great job of working with the front view on the right. They're both presented in slight diagonals, creating a kind of V shape. So she had a terrific place to put the very narrow and unusual top view and this side view on top to make a terrific page out of it. Gotta say, thumbs up all the way. Very well done, Robin. Are you there? There you are.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Yeah.
I was just about to swap that out with an Illustrator file.
Put the
'Cause I
Illustrator file in so that I have it.
okay, yeah.
Listen, Robin, I'm going to probably show your work off next semester. Every semester, I take a few of your work with your names, by the way, so you get credit. And that's the sample for next semester. So you're going to soon be seeing what people did last semester. So I need the AI files because I may need to output them differently than this PNG. For that reason and others, but very well done. Thank
Robin, I
you.
love the texture on the part that says Taylor. It's so good.
Thank you, Audie.
Really, even just doing the typography looks like it was a challenge. There's so many beautiful details in here. By the way, guys, feel free to just chime in. You have something to say. Look, we have maybe 4 minutes to spend on an individual, given how many people there are. But you want to say something positive to somebody or point something out, like Audie just did. Please just turn on your mic. Okay? We don't have to raise hands or anything. To be honest, when I'm doing critiques, I often don't even see your faces. I'm looking just at the artwork. But feel free to join in. I think this is just gorgeous. Jeez, it's such a good job. Um, Maya, where are you?
Over here. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. There you are. Beautiful, beautiful job. And I have to say, I'm almost kind of glad that we didn't talk more in advance. Like, oh, is this a good object or not? Because I might have thought, oh, gee, can she really get angles out of this light bulb? But you really did. You gave me a top view, a bottom view. There's really, let's call this front view, right? And you got the custom angle. And I'm gonna fly with this because the truth is, it bent the assignment a little bit. Since I needed an object that had a side view, and it's one of the reasons why I was rejecting a lot of column-like objects. No soda cans or anything. Because of no clear side view. But you gave me one extra view, and Frank, because I didn't ask for a bottom view, which you gave me. I think that was thoughtful. And by the way, if you're going to bend the rules ever in any class or anything professional, just do it that well. You get away with lots of stuff when you're really, really pushing the pedal that way. I have no critiques on this. The one thing I think I want to point out most to everybody, and I know it's simple, but doesn't that gradient work incredibly well? The light bulb itself is fairly a neutral colored object, right? It's like whites and grays and, heading toward black, but it does make a big color statement. It's so interesting how this cool and warm blue gradient in the background makes the light bulb sing. Just, very, very well done.
Thank you.
About it. Before we look closer at this one, I do want to say one thing to everybody in this room. It's funny to be a teacher teaching this particular project because it really remembers my own nightmares from art school. So I'm just being very honest with you. you know, so, I'm a professor now, but I remember the whole agony of art school. The School of Visual Arts was just as hard as FIT, very similar. I also taught at Parsons, and it was really kind of very, very intense. And the thing that interests me is some of you guys down the road, let's say a bunch of you became illustrators. Some of you are going to wind up with very cartoon styles, and others are going to wind up with very dramatic, expressionist styles, very painterly styles. Others are going to be wildly rendered, kind of like this project, because there are no stylistic rules. There really are not. Any peer of yours who tells you this style is better than that style, they're just wrong. Just flat out wrong. So I like your first projects in many cases as much as I like these, even though those were much simpler styles. What all I want as the tour guide of the show is for you to have more choices because you prove to yourself what you can do. So down the road, you're going to know you could go this direction or that direction. This is very intimidating to people that are new to this. And then you find out you can do it. Now you're free. Going forward, you're free. So we're going to see how that plays out on the next project. All right. This is a very unusual object. It looks, I guess this is one of those tooth cleaning things. It's coming off very small. Let me make this larger, see why that's happening. Now we got a nice view of it. Complicated and strange object. This artist was brave doing this. It has clear angles on it, but not in a sharp-edged kind of way. It's such a rounded object. Really is quite a challenge. Alessandra, where are you? Can you just wave at me, help me find you? So,
Hi.
how hard was this project for you?
So hard.
Really?
Yeah, because this wasn't like my original project. I did the gumball. I asked for help
Oh,
like last week and I was like,
well done.
no, I really couldn't do it. Like I had to change my object. So when I did this, the gradients feel a little bit more better when I was doing it.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just finished this like 1 hour ago actually,
Yes.
right before
Yeah.
class.
I'm not surprised by that. I'm probably supposed to do this, except I know the reality of it.
Yeah.
College is famous for that kind of thing. I often get up extra early also to work on even the lessons. But I have to say, you learned so much from this project. I mean, it's pretty clear you're in a completely different league than you were even 1 week ago with what you're capable of. And that's one of the things I love about a project like this. Once you cross a certain line, it's just yours. This ability is just like yours. Where this is going to go forward is a whole new story, just completely different level. I think this is very well done and very, very challenging. I really have to say. I like the background too. It's got that bathroom vibe. I think it was a very simple graphic way to make a familiar suggestion to your audience. It's got that tiled wall kind of vibe. So I think that was also a nice, smart addition. Well done.
Yeah.
These are just beautiful. So many of these are beautiful. I think I'm scaring anyone who didn't do so well on this particular project. Look, very few people are going to ace all 4 projects. So if any of you get nervous right now, as long as you're doing your best, I think you're going to be fine. I think this is beautiful. And the thing that interests me about it, again, um, Christine, where are you? Can you wave at me again? I keep it again the first time. Is she here, Christine? Anybody see her? Listen, I'm going to make it kind of short.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're there. There you are. If I had talked to you about this before, I might have been hesitant to accept it. And I'm glad you did it, though, because I think it looks very fine. But my hesitation would have been almost that it's too simple. I mean, it's like a large cube, very tall, rectangular cube, like a tower, with certain details. And you just made a lot out of the details. I want to point out a couple things there that make me much happier about it. And I'm pleased that you did do it. I think one of the things that knocks me out the most is the transparency of the drawers. I mean, most of you guys have seen this kind of furniture around, right? Sometimes they have, are these plastic drawers?
Yeah.
They are. So, they have this frosted kind of plastic quality. And I knew that because of how well you rendered it. The whole idea that I could see these objects inside like that, this stuff is just killer. It's so specific, you know. And again, very nice color. She went with a flat color, it looks like, in the background. I can't tell if there's a texture on it or if my screen is dirty. It looks great either way. But I have to say, very, very thoughtfully made, simple in some ways, but difficult in terms of color. And it really sings most in terms of color and light. Really, really well done. You know, I have to say, whoa. So I wonder if the school thinks I'm overly generous because it looks like there's going to be a lot of A's the way this is going. You know, and you know, I would love for them to challenge me because I want to show off. I'd say, oh, come on. All right, let's get a look. You know, really outstanding in many ways. I mean, gee, the quality of the glasses, the knockout, you almost don't want to say anything else about it. And Samantha, I think this just looks terrific. One thing I'm kind of wondering about just a tiny bit is, you know, this feels quite a bit smaller than the one next to it. And I know the angle is narrow, right? So I'm checking for a couple things, like, is the very bottom following the line? It kind of is. Let's call this the shoulder. The shoulder here on this one looks low, right? So it's making it look smaller. And I know we're looking a slightly different angle as well in terms of maybe we're looking down a little bit more on it, but it's also making the cap kind of low. So I do feel like this one here could be enlarged, just stretched out, you know, not redrawn, you know, just enlarged a little bit. It'll feel more natural next to this one. The cap here is looking, this is looking very nice. It's an unusual moment here. And this one also, I think, looks particularly well. I'm not sure that I'd race to any of those changes. This project just looks great. I'm just saying this is the one spot that if we had to publish this, I would say, oh yeah, Samantha, just see if you could scale this a little bit differently so it doesn't feel smaller. Samantha, where are you? You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, thanks.
You do. You know, I would feel fantastic about this project though, but you know, I have to say for a lot of you guys, you don't want to lose these. You know, you guys have made a lot of portfolio pieces in my class. I mean, it's so impressive. Seriously, I could just open any of my folders and pick one of your pieces out at random. I mean, they're that good. And I'm not saying by the time you graduate, you might not blow these things away. But frankly, they're so mature looking. I don't think anyone could guess your age or how much art school you've had these. Keep them around. You might need them. So if you get a brilliant idea at any point because you want to show this off in a portfolio, little ideas like, is a different color in the background better? Or should I just take this object, make it bigger or smaller? That's not a big deal. You know, really, you know, it'd be worth maybe doing that for that kind of motive. I think it's a beauty. You know, I wanted to ask you, Miles, you know, we got to talking about this last week and you know, something occurred to me just afterwards. So you actually have an Iron Man head in your house? So you know, we all thought it was 20. So you've given away your secret identity now.
And yeah, I came out with the decision about that on Halloween.
Yes. It's so 21st century now. Like we're all, this is who I am, god damn it.
Congrats.
What pronouns does Iron Man use? Robin, are you kicking in?
They and them. No, I don't know.
Yeah, I said congrats.
Congrats. Yeah, it's beautiful. You know, one reason I asked is like, and you know, I got to know Miles a little bit. We had just a little bit of dialogue together. So I knew that he had to have that. But later on, I thought, wow, are there just maps of how this guy's suit looks? You know, so I had to be sure that you actually had the object. I knew it because I could tell you have that kind of character. So guys, take a look at this. You might remember, unless he and I talked about this privately, that he made the decision to do one more view. I forgot exactly how that came about, Miles. I guess you gave me the back view, right? And I wanted a different view. And
let's just say I wanted to do extra work.
Yeah, let's put it that way, right? And it wound up being this terrific design. And I want to point something out. So yeah, the head in the middle is bigger. And it's not at all a problem because it's so obviously intentional. You know, that's where the page layout kicks in on stuff like this. You know, it's like if things don't look intentionally different sizes, they should feel the same size, like the four smaller ones. Then he's given us the drama of the front view smack in the middle. And again, that background in your case is more like a blueprint. It's funny how similar it was to the one that felt like bathroom tile. But here, it just makes a lot of sense. It's all about design and just beautiful work, really. I'm sure people are it's impressive, isn't it, everybody? Now, I know some of you are still waking up, or you're part of that camp that has been taught that it's not cool to show enthusiasm. You know, frankly, that's so bizarre to not show enthusiasm. Why bother being human? Be an ant, maybe. I never saw an ant smile or wag its tail or anything. But we're so expressive. The face was designed with hundreds of maneuvers to express stuff. Why would you hide that? Is it too private, the fact that you have an emotional life? I'm glad I'm making some of you laugh. All right, in any case. All right. Beautiful work. Wow, did this come a far way from last time I saw it? Wow. I want to ask Liwai. Liwai, where are you? Wow, did you get better? Good Lord. Holy cow. Hey, can I say, did you put a texture on the background? I think I can't hear you. Is it me? Did I have my volume? No, my volume's up. I'm going to unmute you, okay? All right. Is there a texture on the background of some sort? Liwa, I can't hear you, so I'm gonna just drop that question. It's not important. I turned your mute off and then you turned it back on. So don't touch the mute button. All right, one more time. Did you put a texture on the background? I'm gonna drop it. I don't know why I can't hear you, Liwa, but I'll talk for you. It's just beautiful. I don't have much to say. It's a weird technique on these, right? Like it's when there's an obvious issue. There's stuff to talk about, but when stuff is just nailed like this, it's just so professional. I want to open this up a little bit. Would anyone like to comment on Liwai's project?
I think it looks really realistic.
It does, doesn't it? And something about the colors are just singing too. The weirdest thing about realism? I want to show you guys something. Give me a minute. This is a little bit of a detour. I want to make a point for a second.
I remember seeing this one in the folders before, and now it's like so good. Like it just kept going up levels.
I know there's some kind of magic happening. I have to say, folks, like even though I'm much older than most of you, my path is really not that different. I reach a stage where I'm a little stagnant, and it's like, oh, am I improving at all? Maybe a long time goes, have I lost it? And then suddenly there's this period of the leap, and then I'll work with that leap. And so I really understand this. It's interesting to see when people catch a fire with a new tool. Clearly, Liwai can go anywhere she wants right now. And I know it wasn't always easy. I want to show you guys something just quickly. I just want to make a small couple of points. Some of you guys know this, very, very famous artist who's, rather well known in Caravaggio, right? And I just want to say, in his day, this was considered extreme realism. But if you look at this guy's face, that just does not feel realistic to me at all. The light and shadow does, the dimensionality does. I love the painting because frankly, I don't really typically care whether it feels realistic or not. But this was realistic to his world, very limited colors, everything sort of neutral colors. They weren't selling high chroma color yet, so that's part of the reason. But if you think about it, what we're used to thinking of as realistic, is it? The sculptures are crazy realistic, obviously. And as gorgeous as this is, of course, that didn't work out. Sorry about that. And we all know this famous painting. Is it realistic? Realistic, to a certain degree. Sure enough, the anatomy is wonderful. And now there's a lot more color going on. So we're looking really at the Sistine Chapel. I would have liked to get a larger one for you. But, this is not the way the world looks. So we're used to thinking of it that way. So I'm just making a point, really, a point that I like to make about what realism is. In her case, the colors are extra bright. I love the simple gradient in the background that's not competing. It's a neutral color, but a color that somehow just makes this look wonderful. It's really dead on, beautifully done.
Levi wrote something in the chat for you too.
Oh yeah, all right. Let me take a look. See, sorry about that. That's hard for me to keep an eye on sometimes. Right, so it's a gradient in the background. I was wondering if she applied some kind of texture too. It could just be the way it looks on my screen, but it looks like sponge. Again, I've not cleaned my screen. Just say really quickly, it's debatable whether this last one should be larger because it does feel smaller than the other three. And I know the angle's more complex. And if she did make it larger, she'd have to make room for it because, you know, the screen got kind of tight. So she'd have to make these three smaller to make room for this to be larger. I mean, surely it does have a little breathing room. But I have to say, I think it's gorgeous even as is. So I'm delighted. So, you know, I think these are going great. It's just that it's too, oh, let me hang on a second. I think my screen is actually causing trouble here. I was going to say that it's 2 views short. It looks like it is 2 views short.
Yeah, I wasn't able to finish, so I'll be happy to revise it and turn it in a full project.
Leah, you know what? One thing you'll hear me say very often, if you need a little extra leeway in any regard, just do what you do really well, which you did.
Okay.
Your teachers, your bosses, your art directors, your partners, everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, I'll give you the room when you do something as good as this, right? And, you know, my only concern for you, Leah, and anyone else who fell a little bit behind is the next project is also very large. The good news on the next project is you have a lot more power about how you go about it. So some of you are going to find, you know, more simpler ways to execute it. We have 1 month for the last project. So, you know, if it takes you a few days out of that project to finish this, I don't think that's going to be a big hardship. This is a very weird object, but one thing I love about it is it's porcelain with a gold nose or glass. And the light on it is just staggeringly convincing. So I want to ask Leah a question about it, just for everybody's sake. So it looks like a lot of gradients, right? What kind of gradient did you use on this object?
I actually didn't use any gradients. Everything is just all mesh tool.
Mesh tool. So mesh is a form of gradient.
Oh.
It's the gradient mesh. So,
yeah.
You know, I think some of you are going to get mad at me that I made the strange choice to not cover gradient mesh this semester. And a couple reasons. You already covered radial gradient. Y'all kind of found that sort of easy. And linear gradient. Don't forget how powerful it is, but easy. More recently, it's all been about freeform gradient, whether you're using points or lines. Freeform gradient didn't exist just a year ago, you know, a little over a year ago. So everybody used this other feature called gradient mesh. Just to give you an idea, a mesh looks like a checkerboard pattern. So anything you draw, you apply a mesh to it, and you could tell it how many rows and how many columns to have. So if you have a very fine mesh, there's lots of little squares, and you get to put color in each square, and they blend. Right? So it's like you put colors in the checkerboard, you take 10 boxes and make them all red, and they could bleed into the boxes next to it that are blue, and you get a gradient. You know, it's a little bit more complicated, and Leah obviously is pretty much mastered the skill, right? There's a lot of arguments whether you need gradient mesh and freeform gradient, which is significantly easier. In my own opinion right now, and I'm rather fluent in gradient mesh, I have just not touched it since I discovered the freeform gradient. Just stopped using it. So I don't know. I know people love it, and you should continue to use it. There are articles online, by the way, about what's good about both, and even videos about what's good about both. Gradient mesh. So I don't expect to squeeze it in this semester. Maybe I will. I don't know. Anybody have any question or statement? I don't mean to plow through anybody. So in any case, Leah, yeah, get that to me by next class. Is that doable for you? The rest of it? That would be ideal. All right. Yeah. Excellent.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I love the background color too. Just perfect. That kind of like classy teal color. It just feels like the wall, you know, behind the bookcase that has these fancy objects in it. Really beautiful. These are just all so impressive. Is your teacher just in a positive mood, or are these as good as I think? Wow. You know, again, it wasn't enough for Juliana to show off that she could handle 2 distinctly different textures. You know, really complicated object with 2 different textures, but she really wanted that background to make a statement. She's got that graphic suggestion of the ocean on these lines on the background and this tasteful gradient. I just love it. I want to back away a little bit because the only thing that I'm asking myself, and I want to say, Juliana, I honestly am asking myself. This is not me being, you know, coy. Juliana, where are you? I'm so bad at finding people. There you are. Okay. I'm wondering whether they should have been a dash smaller or not, so that they're not like crowding the rectangle. I think you may have made a great decision anyway, because such an airy object. I mean, there's really so much air in the object itself. It comes very close to the ceiling, very close to the floor. And I know if it was mine, I would have gotten a peek to see what they would look like if they had a little more space above and below. But I'm not sure that would have been better. So I'm not really asking you to do it. I'm just saying if it was mine, I would try it. I do want to say one thing to everybody, though. These are really large files for Illustrator. Illustrator work is usually light and fast, but we're rendering so much that a lot of these files are slow. So sometimes you don't even want to scale something. Like if your computer's not all that, brawny, and you try to take a very rendered object and make it smaller, it'll do it, but it might take a minute, and you're sitting there waiting. So I don't know. I think this is just beautiful, though. Again, really, really confident work. Don't really have any, I have very little in the way of changes for anybody here. I do want to say something about this, Jackson, though. The shoes look so good, and the nervy background I just love, and yet they're really just too small for this page. They're so well rendered, beautifully rendered. And I love this strange line that you've got on the ground, which feels like some kind of court, and someone's going to play some sport in these sneakers. So I think these look beautiful. I'm kind of curious about why do you make the choice to make them that small? Jackson, where are you?
I'm right here. Hi.
Hi. Oh, there you are. Yeah. So did you have like a strategy why you chose to make them so tiny?
So basically, my idea with this is if you look at the left side of the page, I wanted the shoe to like kind of spin. So as you can see that it's on its side on the far left, and then in the middle it goes to like that like slightly turned, and then you have
I
that
see.
front view. And in order to do that,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to like really mess with like stretching it out.
Gotcha.
Or I don't really want to distort it too much, so the only way to do that was to make them kind of on the small side so that they would all fit in well but not be approaching the border too much.
So I have to say that's well thought out, and I really appreciate that you could vocalize that. It's really important on a team when I'm working on a team that the people that work with me can communicate. That was clear. On the other hand, I have to say that I disagree. Making this larger or smaller won't distort it at all, especially if you hold down the shift key, which makes sure that objects don't distort. They just get larger. The beauty of Illustrator is Illustrator never distorts anything. The artist might, but the program will not because it's a vector program. So unlike Photoshop, Illustrator could, they say, scale to infinity, right? That's the phrase, scale to infinity, meaning you get it as big as you want. I like your thinking, and yet I don't think it really came out. It doesn't really come off the way you describe. So this is what I'd suggest to you. You got beautiful sneakers. All the hard work is done. This could easily get an A. You got a thoughtful background, which is fresh. I really love the way those white lines work with the margin, for example. And this vague reference to sports courts, like a tennis court. I love all of that. It's got all the ingredients for an A, but I would ask you, if you would, to just give me a different layout, kind of drop that spinning shoe idea because it doesn't really communicate. Like if you're doing a storyboard for an animation or a video, you'd be off the ground to communicate that. It would be hard anyway, since this one's a top view, so I have to say, as much as I like the concept, I just can tell that this will be a knockout piece if you let yourself scale those up. So I'm not saying as big as possible. If you like a lot of air, okay, then you preserve more air than others might. But I think at this stage, it's all about the court, all about the background, punctuated by the sneakers. And the sneakers are just too good looking. Do you hear me on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so give me another version of it. I'd be surprised if it took you more than a half an hour, unless your computer's slow, then maybe an hour, and it'll just look wildly better because you got all these great ingredients. And you got to love the freedom to move stuff around in Illustrator. Really, it's just a beautiful part of it. I have to say, I think it's beautiful, and there's some really thoughtful additions. I'm a little stuck on the background just because it's so simple and smart. But I do think the sneakers came out great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's funny. Like I just constantly talk about layout. I really do, because in the end, we're all designers, even though you're all going to go into different majors. In this room, God knows if we bumped into each other as a group in 5, 6 years or 10 years, we'd all be doing something else, by then. But we always design, even if you go into filmmaking, every shot is a design, you know, um, sculpture, illustration, photography, product design. This is just a fabulous design. I just love the heads being laid out on a diagonal like that. I do have some questions for Elsa. I'm just sort of curious. Elsa, where are you? Help me find you. There you go. Are these made of plaster?
It's porcelain, I think, or like clay.
Clay. Because are they Mexican?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious about it. Really, it doesn't really affect the quality of the project. They have, uh, uh, by the way, I'm not really sure that I would be able to take a painted clay object and a painted plaster object in an illustration and make it look any different. I think even with a photograph, they'd probably look very, very similar. But they're clearly not plastic. And I was kind of curious because I've seen this kind of object made in paper mache or plaster. I want to ask you something else. And again, these are just things that I'm curious about and like people to get to hear your response. I think those elements in the background, the yellow line graphics, just work really, really well. I'm just curious about what led to those particular shapes.
They're supposed to be like the flowers that are typical for Day of the Dead.
I'm glad I asked because, I'm of the opinion that even decorative elements that are supporting the main theme, all count. They all matter. They all need a reason. She had a reason. And even though I didn't pick up on that very good reason, I accepted it because these elements are so decorated, and they have such abstract paint jobs on the actual objects that I was very willing to accept, a somewhat abstracted floral object in the background. I had the hunch, though, that she had a good reason. This just looks wonderful, and the layout really sings. Gotta say, I'm very happy with it. Nice. Carly, that was clever what you did with the star and those couple of stripes. Gosh, where are you? Can you help me find you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you are. Also, you don't have to say, I love Zoom because I'm a homebody, and I'm that kind of artist that, doesn't come out very often. But for you guys, I really do wish we were back in the classroom just because, I know you're going to make friendships that are going to last for years. Don't be discouraged, right? I don't think next semester is going to happen in terms of the physical classroom. I'm going to say a moment about that. But I hope no one minds saying it looks like we'll have a new president and he's very concerned with beating this pandemic. I'm not 100% sure that the last fella noticed that people were getting sick and dying, but this guy's pretty aware of it. So I would say, I would think at least by next fall, you'll be back in the classroom. My best friends are still the people I met in college at SVA. Really, they were the people who worked hardest to always shock me in the classroom, and we're still shocking each other, hopefully, and supporting each other. So I sometimes call on you so other people can get used to you talking and seeing each other, and also just for me. In any case, I do think that little addition was just so strong. I got to say, the sneakers look fantastic. Naturally, but now your whole class, though, has got a similar skill level, so it's going to get harder for you to impress each other since you all have this kind of ability. But to add this, for one, the clean white behind the sneakers, this looks amazing. The white part of the rubber sole and the white laces, just absolutely love that white background, especially since the logo for the company has so much white in it on the sneaker itself. And then you reversed it so that the white circle on the sneaker's logo isn't there at all. So you made the star white. I love the neutral color that you chose up here. It's not dark enough to compete with the sneaker, but it's quiet, very similar into the sneaker. It's just a terrific layout. Also nice shadows under the sneaker. But I have to say, the killer part is finding a simple solution to make the design count like that. One thing I got to say to you, Carly, about it, this was a very work-intensive project for everybody. I don't think anyone found this a quickie, But when you can come up with simple solutions that look great, I got a half an hour solution that's going to score an easy A. and the other person is a 10-hour solution, it's going to score an easy A. In a weird way, the half-hour person kind of wins. You know what I mean? So at least the background here was very economical, but made such a big difference. It's something I discovered in the workplace. I used to always take the long way around to everything. And then I realized I just could not keep up with deadlines. I had to start think of more efficient ways to get to my goals. Though I'm sure the sneakers took a long time. Carly, do you have any idea how long this project took?
I mean, I worked on it like every week. I did the two for like 2 days a week, each week, I think.
Would you think this took more than 20 hours or less than 20 hours?
More.
More than 30?
A long time. No.
Yeah. So I think that gets kind of reasonable because not all my projects are quite that large, and we had a month for this particular project. So if you look at it, 7 hours a week for one class's homework is a lot. I realize the art schools in New York say that's the norm. I know a young woman at, where is she at? I think she's at Pratt. And I know she does more than that for every single project. And I worked at Parsons. That was also kind of the norm at Parsons. I personally don't think that should be the norm. So this is the only project that's going to be that large as a necessity. Because I know a lot of you guys did that many hours. Some did more, some did a little less. The next project, we'll see how we go about it. It's also work intensive, but not like this. Beautiful work though. Easy portfolio piece, really.
Thank you.
Wow, a clever layout. You know, it's in a weird way. I think one of the reasons I keep talking about layout today is the rendering level got so high for everybody. You know, this is just a terrific layout. Again, Carly, there you are. I see you. I found you by myself. The Carlys are next to each other, so they kind of helped out. I'm glad you guys spell your names differently. I really appreciate that. This is beautiful. I gotta say, she's got this killer negative space going on between these shelves that she drew, right? So it's got this, it's almost like some kind of video game action is gonna go on where I have to navigate between these severe diagonals and the horizontal gray stripes that go with it. I really also love the very, I don't even know how to put it, the dare I say, artificial way that you drew the shelves, because the shelves have parallel lines. It fits in a lot to my lecture about the whole orthographic argument and that kind of thing, because they're abstracted like they would be in a video game. The realism, the true realism, is reserved for the sneakers. So they're almost in this like 3D world, it kind of feels like, even though it also obviously imitates a shoe store. So I have to say, graphically, it's interesting. The renderings are gorgeous. It's just really easily, you might say, a top shelf project.
I love this one.
What were you saying, Miles?
No, I said I love this one. This one came out so good.
You know, it's so meaningful to each other. You know, something that drives me really crazy. My daughter's in college too, and she's creative type, does a lot of writing. And recently, she was getting bored in a class, and then the teacher just liked this one thing she wrote, and bothered to communicate that. Oh, you know, how good this was. And then later in the day, she said to me, "Boy, I hate how much I like it when the professor likes my work." I was like, I really get that. I remember being in college, because you're artists. You're all artists. You're here for yourself, for your eventual audience. And some of you could care less if the teacher likes your work or not. But since some of you do, I wish I had the time to write everybody about every project. You really can get some feedback. You know, so I'll have to say, but what's just as valuable is when you say something to each other. You know, oh, that rocked, you know, or that was so good, or I love the way you did whatever.
I feel like you can feel exactly like what it feels like to hold this shoe, like the squishiness in the fabric.
It's true, right? They are kind of squishy, you know, and they have very, you know, curious textures. Like, you know, modern sneakers, you know, some of you guys, we saw the one with the star on it, had that old cloth style sneaker that was the norm for many years. Even when I was a child, that was sort of like the norm. And now we have all these unusual materials and different kind of shoe-like qualities. And this looks comfortable. You know, like you want to put it on.
It is really comfortable. My most comfortable.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Got it. And so you knew what it felt like, which, you know, it's a pretty interesting thing, right? Like, how different do we draw stuff when we know them personally? You know the feel. That feel had to come across, and it did, and it really did. This one looks like, I know the artist is thinking, oh no, I hope he doesn't harass me about the fourth camera over there. I know I'm not. This is going very well. I obviously want it to get done. How you doing, Angel?
I'm doing fine.
Yeah, you're doing fine. I think this looks terrific. And again, it's interesting to me, the colors you all, listen, I want to tell you something that I'm not going to have to do for you. Last year, I got these great renderings, and so many of the backgrounds felt wrong. They just were not flirting with this tremendous art that the students had made. The backgrounds were like the wrong curtain behind the star. And I went in and I changed a bunch of the backgrounds before I showed them to you. You guys are really thoughtful. This is a flat color background, but it's just interesting how well it works with a very gray object, a traditional old, style object. Angel, I want to ask you something. Is that a like antique Polaroid, or is it one of the new ones coming out?
I got it from a thrift shop, so I didn't have time to include all the details, but like it's peeling off some parts.
Oh, so it's a piece of history.
Yeah, it works.
They got popular again is the reason I ask. And now there's even these like semi-digital Polaroid-like cameras where all the tools on the camera are digital, but you still get to use film. But so I was kind of curious, have you taken any shots with this?
Yeah, it's a piece of garbage.
Is it? Oh, so then this next idea would have been a bad idea. I was going to say, how cool would it have been if?
I mean, I know that Polaroids are like.
You would need two Polaroids, right? For the Polaroid to take a picture of the Polaroid.
The quality of it's kind of shit.
Oh well.
Good.
I mean, I want to move on because I realize we don't have time to talk about it. But part of the beauty of old cameras is the junky quality. You know how like sometimes you damage a piece of art and it looks better?
Yeah.
So something about that old school quality, like old home video kind of look. But I have to say, I like the color a lot. The rendering's looking great. You're obviously on your game, right? You're just one image behind. Don't let yourself fall too far behind, right? Because I want you to get the grade you deserve. The only thing that I have to wonder about this one is, do they really want to be far across? Because the space itself isn't particularly lively. And I'm just wondering whether moving them around and finding a different arrangement might be worth your time. I like the colors. I don't really have any need there. I'd focus on finishing the last camera. And then if possible, move them around, consider scaling them just to see if you could make an arrangement that will flatter them more. Because it's looking.
No, I only arranged them like that because, well, the last one's not finished, but my original idea was to put the 1, 2 in a row in the top left, and the third one right below that,
right.
And the last one to be like the star of the composition.
Okay, so you've clearly been thinking it through. I think I would have gone the same route, by the way, of just getting the rendering done, and deal with the design element later. I think I would have done the same thing. So anyway, this is looking really good, very promising. I'm looking forward to seeing the finished one.
I also want to add something.
Yeah, please.
My pronouns are they, them.
Say that again?
My pronouns are they, them.
They, them.
Yeah.
I will do my best to remember that.
Yeah.
I'm old, so I'm slower to get, I'm slower to get the hang of that. You guys have a representative in my house. My daughter, she's 22. So any social changes in the climate that I'm not getting, she's always badgering me to get with it.
Okay.
But I'll do my best, Angel. And feel free to correct me, guys. I'm not shy about that at all. I'm so excited to be in a culture that's just kicking open doors, and I know it's slow. Really, really slow. But it's like one reason I'm still in New York is like New York's often first in line of like getting past whatever kind of crappy limits we have around. A lot of your families came here for those reasons. I don't even like the word tolerance too. It's a crappy word. Tolerance? It's a little weird. But anyway, yes. Anyway, you guys fill me in on pronouns or anything you might need from me in that regard. Okay, so we've got this fancy style mouse, and you know, an interesting approach. The artist went at it like a black and white photo, right? We see a lot of color today, and the mouse itself uh, is probably a white object that's got some serious shadow cast on it right now, and so the background is sort of a very pale gray, which is the artist's you know, strategy, you know, to stick with that. I have a couple of thoughts about this one, and again, they're just thoughts. Andrew, where are you? There you are. I see you. You know, what interests me about these is it's strangely atmospheric. One might even say dramatic for an object that one never thinks of that way. You know, it's like the driest thing in town, a mouse. You know, it's not a rose next to a bottle of wine or anything, you know, or a gun lying next to a body. And yet it has this sort of almost, you know, noir kind of vibe. I personally would probably play that up since the object's already rendered that way. I wonder if one could do a kind of dramatic gradient in the background to make it feel more like spotlit in a thicker atmosphere. Um, you know, so that it get a little bit more mileage out of the kind of look that you already have. Can you imagine that at all?
Yeah.
Right? You're a man of few words. Definitely not playing poker with you either, he said profoundly. Yeah. The other thing I want to do is about the scale of those objects. So you got the objects, they're well rendered. The scale is kind of wonky though. They all feel, these are probably the same size. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on in terms of the changes of size. So I would say to push this into the excellent zone, since you've got the rendering pretty down, is I would rethink the sizes so they don't feel random. You know, anything that's a different size has to feel like you had a reason. I don't even have to know what your reason is. It just has to be convincing enough. You have some stuff I like. I mean, you got beautiful negative space in between these objects, and yet somehow I don't feel like they're using the page as well as they could. I'd consider moving them around, changing scale a little bit. Maybe, you know, if you want to stick with the black and white strategy, which I think kind of works, I would find a way to use that to just push it a little further. I could kind of see this with a thicker sense of atmosphere and light, and nothing but playing with a more elaborate gradient is what I'm suggesting, something kind of simple like that. You know, I want to say to everybody in here, as a guy who's art directed, you know, to be honest, I kind of prefer working alone. In a really large majority of my work, I do by myself. But I've art directed a number of projects. And the one thing that I'm always looking for is, oh, wow, what's the best element that this person on the team just gave me? You know, and then I'm like, okay, this is the least element. Let's see if we could drop that. But this aspect of what you did is rocking. Can you give me more of that? So it's very capitalistic. It's what I call art capitalism. And I don't mean selling paintings for more money. I'm capitalizing on the qualities, you know, literally getting an analysis of what's singing most in your own artwork so you could take advantage of it, and what's singing least so that you could overcome it, you know. So I have to say this one's got a lot of potential. I do think though with very little work it'll go from one level to a whole other level because the hard stuff is done. Clever, super duper clever. So Adi, I gotta ask you something. So this camera in some element showed up before, didn't it? Was it like was it a co-star in some earlier piece of artwork?
I didn't put it in anything.
You didn't? Oh, you don't. Somebody else in one of my classes has the same camera. They didn't do it for this project, but the camera, you know what I think it was? It was how to take a picture or something like that. It must have been the last project.
Probably
so
the
like,
pictogram.
I thought maybe you were very attached to it. So I just want to say, we could all see that the rendering is sort of beautiful. I mean, really, if you look over here, just the gleams that are on it are just beautiful. You got a very thoughtful gradient going in the background, you know, with beautiful. And it's noticing that, you know, how subtle it is, right? That a non-artist is going to probably perceive it as a flat color, but you all can see how she's got more light on the top and slightly darker on the bottom, and, you know, perhaps a little cooler on the top. So that's
I actually couldn't decide like what colors to do because nothing looked good with it. And then I was walking and the beach was like these very interesting blue colors. So I took a picture of it and then I used the little like color dropper tool and just took the gradient out of the beach.
I think that's great. story, truly, truly relevant. I have the same experience often where going outside suddenly triggers something I didn't expect. You know, I'm staring at a pigeon and the colors on the pigeon's feathers or whatever. Or, oh man, that's what I needed. And so I really inspired. By the way, though, it's very common to borrow colors from photographs. You know, like you did. It's also very common to borrow colors from the object itself and focus on one color as the background. But what is it about white and blue anyway? You know, it's a thing. You know, white snow will often have blue shadows. So there's a natural relationship between these colors. But of course, you know, to give us an actual Polaroid for one of them was just a great touch to put the Polaroid in the picture like that. You know, give us a little conceptual spin on the whole thing. I have to say, very well done. I don't really have any edits for it whatsoever. It's just there. It's dead on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're going to go a few steps further and take a break. I know critiques are exhausting. Some of you guys listen real closely to see if there's anything in there of real value. Others zone out quickly. So we're going to try to break soon, right? We have only, you know, some number of these left to do. We want to really discuss the last project today also. So I want to go a little bit further though. You know, it's funny. I saw this one early, and I was, you know, very interested in this. What do you call this thing? Is this a compact? Is that what this is called? Is
It's
there a
like
name?
a compact mirror, but it has like makeup product in it as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So, and I think I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this guy, this one here. So she's used the texture very wisely for the stuff that's inside. It's very, very simple. Some of my favorite parts is this. You guys give me a minute? There's some strange sound right outside my door. Yeah, no problem. No evildoers. I like this one on the right, really, just because it has the most to look at. You know, these are just so similar. They're not really communicating enough about angles, so it leaves me a little bit hungry. I feel like the object might have been a little simple for this particular project. I do like the light. It is convincing and confident. I got a couple of views that show off angles in a nice way. This side view here, it's got the elliptical shaped object and a little bit more activity on the lid itself. This one too, but it is, you know, let's just be frank, just like a little repetitive. You know, looks like it could have been done kind of quicker. So it's definitely a respectable project, but I feel like if you'd found a slightly more challenging object, you might have been able to sink your teeth in a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, again, you know, if one was going to go with something this simple, is there anything that could be added that would take it up a notch? I mean, right now it's efficient. You know what I mean? Just to be blunt about it. So I have to say, you know, the weird thing is that I really want to, you know, just say to everybody, I know that some people rock the first project, but not the second, or they rock the second and not the third. You know, there's just too many variables, especially when you've got too many classes. So as long as you're learning, you're moving ahead. And as long as it's respectful work, you know, respecting your talent, that is, not me, but you, right? And I have not seen one that didn't achieve that. Now, right now, what I'm trying to get at is, how do you go from competence to wow? You know, and that's what we're all here for, right? That's the way we see art. It's never about competence, but a lot about wow. Let me just back off on this a little bit. 1 minute, see why I'm having a small scaling issue. There we go. You know, I want to tell you what I like best about this, and I think we're going to take a break. I think the thoughtful background is actually the thing that makes these very simple bags look better. It's got a very quiet kind of elegance that it looks like the artist is after. A stroke, you know, around the central box, as simple as that is. But, you know, okay, that's no big deal, but we really haven't seen that today, right? It's a graphic decision. You'll often see that kind of thinking in fashion magazines. I particularly like, though, the very bold stripe in the middle that just fades completely into white. So the rest of the page, which is white, is it's married to that white. So we've got this bar here that really respects all this white air around it, as well as the white outside of the margin. You know, the object itself is very simple. There's like really no details on it. It looks like it was done very, very quickly. I consider this work on time. I would say this artist might want to consider ramping this up considerably. It will get a respectable grade, but it's obviously not at the level that I think this artist is capable of based on what I'm seeing. You know, it's just there's little to sink your teeth into, you know, for something that took a month. You know, well, I like a lot about it. It looks like it could have been done in a much shorter amount of time. Definitely not a month's worth. Guys, I do want to check something quickly before we get a look at this very nice looking piece. I want to just take a quick look in the folder itself, just to have an idea of how far along we are. A second there. Oh, it looks like we're pretty close to the conclusion. I think what I'm going to do in that case is, it looks like this has gone a lot faster than I'd expected it to. Did I skip? Let me do these last couple that I see, and then I want to ask you if I skipped anything. We'll take a break, and we'll come back and use our time well. All right? Because we're almost through it, so it doesn't make sense to leave one or two undone. This is a very convincing object. Again, this one also went with a very low chroma decision. It's another black and white one. It's interesting that we saw so much color, and then we saw 3 black and white ones, it looks like, in a row or close to being in a row. It's a very subtle strategy. I like it a lot too, because there's a lot of light around these objects. If you look at this one in the middle, for example, it really exists in space. You know, the gradient of the background's working so well with the colors of the object itself. The sizes are really very, very convincing. I just want to ask the artist a couple things. I'm just sort of curious about it. John, where are you? There you are. What is it? Is this like it's beautifully rendered. It's not a criticism. I'm just sort of curious. What is the object?
It's a hand steamer for the clothes.
Oh,
like you put the color, you put the water in the machine and then wait for a minute, and then it will be like.
It takes wrinkles out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny. The first time I even heard of one of these things was yesterday. So it's funny. So this is I see it. I need one of these. This is very well rendered, very professionally laid out. It's quiet. It's very clear. It looks openly like an ad, right? You know, and I know a lot of these feel that way because they are products, but it's very sure of itself. I really appreciate the little addition of the text in the top right. It's a very straightforward poster. It's very self-confident, very, very sure, very certain. So it's interesting here, we've got another round object, but this particular version has just got a lot of passion in it. Let me just try to get this to a comfortable zoom for us. I don't want to leave out that stripe. The gold of the object is very well rendered. It's bold, you know, very bold attitude about the colors. So it's like the difference between, say, like a Monet and a Caravaggio, like we were looking at earlier. It's interesting that it's a makeup device, and yet this is a very muscly interpretation of it. You know, it's got some brawn to it. It's not about subtlety. I want to ask Anisha something. Anisha, where are you?
Hi.
Hi. You know, I want to say a couple things to you. You know, when you look at a soap ad, they're so often white. You know, white bar of soap, white wall behind it, maybe one little drip of water on the soap, and it's all about purity and cleanliness, you know. And then, you know, you have to wonder, if they were making soap just for men and soap just for women, how different would the ads be? Probably very.
Yeah.
You know, probably very. I don't know if the soap for men would have a construction worker hanging out on the girders of a building or whatever, but they would probably want to appeal to that side of the male mind. You know, it's interesting to me how this one is very modern in a sense, because it's not like light, gentle, old school. This is a product for women, so we're going to make this so like gentle or something. It's clearly not where your generation's at. So this has definitely got a much more severe kind of attitude about it, which I really like. The bold colors, it goes all the way down to black on this device, is really showing up all the golds. Also, gotta love the purple name of the product with that one stripe on the bottom to tie the color in. Similarly, something I really don't want anyone to miss is look how the color spots on the object or how she chose the color for the background. So that she's just got a suite, so all the colors that are not gold by and large are relating to warm colors like blush and purple type colors, that whole range of shadowy skin-like colors and other skin-like colors. Just really nicely done, well thought out. So, okay, this may not be finished. I'm going to ask the artist. It's going well, so I'm not really worried at all. Or maybe the artist chose that white box. I'm going to consult with the artist for a minute. So, Naya, where are you?
Hi.
So, you want to tell me about that white box on the last sneaker?
Yeah, I'm still working on it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I have to say, though, I love the bold look. One thing I want to share with you, but also with everybody else. Isn't it interesting how people still have stylistic differences? I mean, you all are working off of photographs, and I'll bet you, I'm not going to do this to you, so don't worry, but I'll bet you if you had to do a different product for another assignment, that your styles would start to get obvious. People would start to guess, oh, that's got to be yours. And they might not be able to say why, which is, I think it's really interesting to notice, even using photos as references, because you're not copying someone else's artwork. Right? You're making your own out of it. It's still you. It still comes off as you. So I have to say, I really love the bold look of these sneakers. I like the kind of subtle little shadow that's showing up behind this one, which is like the color of the background works really, really well with this kind of hunter green playing off this leafy, somewhat, green quality that the sneaker has. I'm looking forward to see what happens when this one is done. And it looks like you're well off the ground. So, one thing that, we'll see, though, is, I would keep this one, don't let this one get that close to the bottom edge, right? And once this one's done, see how big they really want to be or where they really want to be. Right now, they're pretty nicely laid out, so it might just work that way. It might feel like there's too much empty space, though. So if that's the case when you're done, just after they're all rendered, right, you might want to rethink where they go or how big they are, at that point. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Hey guys, everybody that's here, did I skip anyone? Please be forward and let me know. So I want to say one thing before we take a break. I forget that this project is not one that one talks about a lot because it's essentially based on rendering. Rendering and design, which I keep bringing up. But rendering, not a lot to say other than wow or not wow or almost wow. And that's pretty much the nature of it. If I had calculated a little bit better about that, I would have invited more questions from you. Would anyone like to comment at all about your adventure making this or about the project or anything related?
I went to sleep at 6.
Did you? 6 this morning?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I didn't go to sleep yet.
Oh.
Hey, OMG.
Liz, yes.
It's not my fault, really. It isn't. I had to do
There's
the
a lot
same
of 3 or 4 a.m. nights.
No, it's definitely not your fault. I totally did it to myself.
Well, you did and you didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, college is intense. I mean, really. Look, you guys didn't choose an easy school, but to be honest with you, even if you tried to find the easiest art program in New York, it wasn't going to be easy. It's just not easy. And the main reason is there's so many people who would like to be artists out there that are kind of creative, but never found their way. And part of it is it just takes so much work, so many hours to get really good at any art form at all. It's just constant practice, constant rethinking, constant brushing yourself off and getting back up again when things don't work. And so the colleges kind of know that. I mean, our goal is to try to do two things, at least my goal. So I won't speak for your other teachers, but I think it's similar. On the one hand, the easy to talk about one is career. All right, these people want creative careers. I want to equip them so they have a good shot at getting that career. And that's going to mean a lot of work. You know, you want to be a pro athlete, you can't blame the coach for asking you to run several miles every single day on top of whatever else. So we're kind of like that, you know. So on one level, it's just that it's career based. I want you to have as much training as possible so you can go out and have that life that you want. But I have to confess with you, and there's a second part that's just as important to me, and I think many of your teachers feel the same. I just want to encourage your creative life. You're in a tribe right now where you could talk about this with each other or others because you're not unique here. But out in the world, you're outnumbered 100 to 1. Now, people don't know what it's like to spend 10 hours drawing something or why anybody would ever do that or what goes on in your mind and your body and your soul and your whole way of thinking after those hours. The world looks different. You guys know that. When you've been doing some good art and you've been focused on it, everything's different. You see everything different. I think partly why artists make art is so that they can carry some of that magical way of seeing into their daily life. You know, you're at the beach, you see those colors, okay, so you want to borrow them for a piece of art, but you're also seeing them at a different level. By the way, I don't mean to sound elitist. I'm not saying that artists are an elite of any sort, not at all. We're not an elite in any way, but we do have certain characteristics. We come to each other to fulfill them and to communicate them and to share them. And we give it to the world because everybody has some amount of that. And they want to be reminded of that critically human quality of seeing strange juxtapositions, strange chemistry visually in the world. There's magic in it. You know, you always got to wonder, why do people think a flamingo is so beautiful? You know, when those flowers come out of the ground in the spring, why are we enthralled by that? You know, why does nature do that? And why does it ring our bells the way that it does? And those are good questions. I don't have clear answers about why you get fired up when you see something beautiful. But what I do have to say is it's part of what makes you human. It's part of what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. You know, there are animals that experience beauty. There are even artist animals. The birds of paradise, for example, to my mind, make art to attract each other. And some are better at it than others. So we're not the only creative animal. I know a couple animals that make music. I know a certain kind of gorilla that drums. I have recordings of them drumming. So art's not unique to our species, but it's unusually important to our species because we're always expecting that there's more than meets the eye. And when you're bored and depressed, you start thinking the world looks flat. Why am I even getting up? Why is it all about doing dishes and laundry and homework, you know, or broken hearts or whatever? But then on other days, it's all magic. You know, you just fired up because there's just something beneath the skin of the world that you sense. And it's your job to somehow get at it. And even if it's sneakers, you know, what the hell? So someone could run, but you're doing the illustration. It should be beautiful. You know, we bring that to the world. We remind each other that we share that wavelength. Okay. So in any case, listen, about all those hours, they will pay off. I do have a lot of arguments about it, I have to tell you. On the one hand, I know you need to practice to get at the level you want to be at. On the other hand, I really do think Western colleges have lost their minds completely. And every generation makes college harder. I fear for your children when you send them to college because I don't want college to keep going in this direction. You do need a social life, even with COVID. You surely need sleep. And so I do apologize if I give you too many 7-hour weeks. You know, I'm trying to juggle your future and your present in some kind of way. All right, it is now 10:30. Let's take ourselves a nice 20-minute break. And Leah gave me a strange reaction. Is that short or long?
No, that's long.
That's long? All right, let's take the 20. Oh, let's make it 5 minutes. She said it's long. No, I'm kidding. Let's take 20. So at 10 to 11, everyone be back, okay? Because we're starting something else. All right, so 10 to 11, I'll see you all back here. All right, guys. Amazing project. Seriously well done. Okay. I'm going to turn myself off for a couple minutes. Hello, everybody. That was cool. I have to say, it's so satisfying seeing that much good work. You know, I do want to say something uh, helpful. Um, so if I feel like a piece is very undercooked, right, I'd like to find a subtle way to let the artist know without making them feel under pressure, because you know life is challenging, and sometimes somebody's just always producing great work, and then life was a disaster for a particular week, and I don't want anyone to feel, you know, under the spotlight if on a given project the work wasn't that great. So if any of you fall in that category, I think you know it. I made it clear in my own way, you know, and I tried not to make you feel too much pressure publicly. But if you have more questions for me, you could ask at the end of the class. You could send me a thoughtful email. By the way, if you send me an email, please let me know what day your class is or your section number. It's easier for me to look it up and see how you're doing. So if the critique left you feeling like the work was unsatisfying, but you got it in today, which is the deadline, that means you've reserved the right to give me a new version. And probably take me up on a couple of you. I recommended small things, but the work was still excellent. A couple of them really did fall a little bit short, but you handed it in on time. So please take advantage of it. See if you could do something better. Again, I'll look at my email and I'll also answer questions at the end of the class. All right. By and large, though, I think you have to agree with me that those were really impressive. You know, I just want to say a last couple thoughts. You know, everybody came to art school for different reasons, right? And some of you didn't know why, really, other than you like to be creative. You want to make sure that your future is a creative one. That makes a lot of sense to me. You know, if you're the type who knows just what you want to do, I came to art school because I want to illustrate children's books, or I want to do storyboards for movies, or I want to do graphic novels, or I want to design games, or any of the many things. That's just great. That's just great. But if you came to art school just because, like, gee, I think I'm an artist, I need to do something like that, I'll figure it out in art school, that's also just great. I bring it up now because I never wanted to be a realist. I never really had any interest in doing that. And I do remember the classes where I was forced to do that. In retrospect, I'm glad for everything that brought my skill level up. Anything that made my eye sharper, my ability wider, so that I had more freedom as the years passed to keep reinventing myself like you will. Okay, there's two things that I want to do. Since it turns out we needed a little less time for the critique than we usually do, being a very kind of blunt subject, I wanted to squeeze in one technique with you, one new technique that I just cannot fit before. So I keep pushing it back. I don't want to push it back any further. There's one small thing, and then I want to show you what the next and last project is. So I'd like for everybody to join me in Illustrator. So if you just head right over and open up Illustrator. The size is not critical right now. I'm not screen sharing, am I?
No.
No, okay, give me a second there. Let me get back in there. There we go. All right, in Illustrator, I'd like you to open up any size page right now. It's not a critical part of what we're about to do. I want to show you a technique that I know some of you needed before, and I apologize I couldn't get it to you before. The subject is masks. Now, the basic steps are super duper easy. There's one or two scary limitations that I want you to be aware of. So let's start with the basics. I'd like you to join me with this little exercise. Could you grab the rectangle tool? Now, just for this idea that I have, I want to make a quick wall. So I'd like you to set up a rectangle so it looks like a brick. Whatever color you feel like, I'm just going with the traditional red kind of brick. Now, once you've got that rectangle down, I would suggest that you option drag to the right to make the next brick. So you draw your rectangle, you get the black arrow next, and I'd like you to option drag yourself 3 or 4 bricks. So you're just making a rectangle, right? And then you're dragging them off to the right. Option dragging on the Mac or Alt dragging on Windows lets you copy. All right, no news to anybody here, I don't think. I want to make more rows though, so it'll be faster if I select the whole row now. I got my black arrow, I'm dragging over this row, and with them all selected, I'm going to option drag. If I wanted to get fancy, I might scatter the rows like that. But that's not important. Just get me a few rows so it looks something like a brick wall. Not the main point. Oh, while you're doing that, here's the idea. Let's say I needed an icon that stood for limitation. And we're making a bunch of circular icons, right? And they stand for different things. And this one stands for limitation. So I want it to be a brick wall, but I want them all to be in a circle. You know, it would have been really rough to try and draw that brick so that the outer edge looks like a circle, go over to each edge and like try to change it into a curve. Does everybody have something to work on? Something brick-like, wall-like kind of thing? Doesn't have to be that exactly, but this will help me make my point. Here's the next step. To put it in a circle, to put it in a mask, the masking object must go on top, right? The top one becomes the mask. So let's take a look. I'm going to ask you to switch to the ellipse tool, which, by the way, uses the letter L, you know, if you can't find it, the ellipse. Now, here's the trick, though. The masking object, I'm going to make mine a different color so it's easier for you to see, can't be bigger than the stuff underneath it. See, this object's going to cut the other stuff off, everything outside of itself. So, you know, I could get bigger if I wanted, but I can't get this big because it'll be a big hollow space. It'll look ugly. So the whole idea is the masking object is like a window, and you're only going to see through that window. So make sure the window is not too large. All right. Now, when you're ready to turn on the mask, you select the masking object, that's the top, and all the parts that should be masked. So if I had other stuff that I didn't want to be in the mask, I'd just make sure that they're not selected, right? In this case, I want it all. So I'm going to get my black arrow and I'm going to select it all the bricks as well as the masking object. All right. You're not going to do this every day, right? But you will do it. So I want everyone to know how. Next step, you selected it all the parts that are going to be masked and the masking object itself, the circle in this case. Then go up to the object menu. In the object menu, if you come down toward the bottom, you see a feature called clipping mask. So let me be clear about this. It's going to look like everything outside of the masking object is clipped off. So you do object menu, clipping mask, make. Pretty cool. Now, before I go further, because just a little bit more that we want to tackle, did it work? I see half a satisfied class and the other half, maybe not. All right, lots of thumbs up. That was easy, right? It really was. I do want to show you a couple things about it, and I'm going to just redo this for a moment. So the whole idea is you could draw anything and put it in a mask, right? But if you just have a couple small objects, you can't see where the edge is anyway, right? So you need enough stuff that's going to go over the edge. So we made this little brick wall. You put any shape you want, and then you select all the parts involved in that particular mask operation, that clipping mask technique. And then it's simply object menu, clipping mask, make. All right, how does this mask behave? Well, everything's a group now. You know, honestly, I think a lot of you have been using groups a lot, which is probably wise. And a lot of you using layers a lot, definitely wise. Some of you use them both to stay organized. Oh, I want to move my sneaker now. Thank God it's a group. Or thank God it's on one layer so I could select it easily. This particular technique makes a group without asking you, right? So I want to go over groups a little bit. Could you get the black arrow, then click on this masking group, I'm going to call it, and drag it around. All right, so you can see it is a group, right? It moves with one click. it does scale. And by the way, it'll never distort. So if you want the exact same shape, just hold down Shift when you scale with your black arrow. So that's good. You could distort it if you wanted to, but why would you want to do that? All right. So it is a group, but what if you wanted to work on the parts? Well, it goes back to the usual rules about groups. There's isolation mode and there's the white arrow. There's other methods, but those are the two that we've talked about. So I want to do isolation mode for a minute with you. Can you get the black arrow and double click on, let me make mine a little bigger. Double click on your masking group. Now, as soon as you double click, I'd like you to look up here in the upper left. So it says the layer you're on, but next to it, it says clip group. Clip group. Now, I got here by double clicking it. So I just want to remind everybody, not everyone's embraced isolation because I don't use it much. Isolation mode means your group isn't going to act like a group. Everything else in the document is kind of locked if we had more. And while you're here, you could use any tool in any way. So try stuff like this. Click on one of the bricks that sticks out. You could tell the whole brick is there. I could actually drag it back on if I wanted to. This stuff here along the edge, I could move it. That's what it looks like now over the edge there. Right? I'm in isolation mode where I can move this stuff around. Why don't you choose something to change its color? So those objects can be deleted, they could be moved, they could be recolored. If you're crafty, they could even be redrawn. You know, if you had a motive for doing that. Got a broken brick. You know, just about anything you could think of that you've learned all semester is still available to you. The only difference is it's in this weird kind of window called a mask. All right, I'm going to back up a little bit. I'd like for everyone to leave isolation mode. So in the upper left, I see this white arrow kind of here. It says clip group. It says layer 1. I'm clicking this little arrow there to get out. I'm going to click it till I'm all the way out. I'm back in my usual document. Look, I want to say something. My generation doesn't use isolation mode a lot. We got used to other ways that came around before isolation mode. I bring it up often though, because a lot of people double click without thinking. You know, they're just in that habit. You know, like you're waiting for an elevator, right? So you're going to keep going to isolation mode by accident. You have to know what it is. So I want to remind you of the way I'd usually do this instead. I'd usually use the white arrow right on the main stage. I'd simply get my white arrow, not the black one, but the white one. Remember, the white one does let you select things that are in a group. So I could click with the white arrow, make decisions, make changes. All right. You guys all right? So I just want to mention what else can you do with that. So on the main stage, we're not in isolation mode. I'm using the white arrow a lot because I'm working on a group. What about the circle itself? Now, if you're going into graphic design, and I imagine a bunch of you are, right? Print design, right? Very often people do this and they might make the circle itself kind of bold. Let's try that out. So I'd like you to get the white arrow. If anything's selected, please click outside to deselect it. With the white arrow and nothing selected, creep up on your object till you get to the circle itself. You should see it highlight a little bit and click that circle. Now with the white arrow, once you click the outer circle, there's all kinds of cool things you can do. For one, I could bring the fill box in front and give it a fill. I'm working with the circle now. So if you missed it, to do that, you can't select the whole object. So you have to find the circle. You click outside, creep up on it, click the edge of the circle. If you want to change the fill, you bring the fill box in front. If you want to change the stroke, you bring the stroke box in front. I'd like you to give this circle a stroke. So I've selected the object. I bring the stroke box in front. I usually do that from the toolbar, but I could do it anywhere I see these two, fill and stroke box. I'm going to give it a black stroke right now. If you can't see the stroke, why not have a look on your properties palette and change the stroke weight? There's at least 3 places you can do this, right? But right now, I've selected the circle. I want to give it an outline. So here's the way it looks. Here's the way it looks with a very bold shape around it. All right. So making a mask was easy, right? Working with the parts is easy as long as you follow the usual rules of a group. You either go to isolation mode or use the wide arrow. You could get the masking object even and give it a color, even though you put it on top. It's weird, right? It acts like a background once you turn the mask on. Does anybody have any questions about masks? So I want to mention one thing before people go mask crazy. Here's a big masking mistake that I see. All right, so guys, watch this. I'm going to move this off for a minute. So a young artist is doing an illustration, and they're ignoring the outside, right? Because there's no margins in that assignment, so they're going right over the edge. But they get annoyed, and they want to knock off the stuff on the outside. I would not do this because I want to show you something here. Let's say I had several layers. And what I'm doing is I'm taking objects here, like this black circle here. How about that? This yellow, 1 minute. I'm taking this shape, I'm putting it on its own layer. I'm gonna take this shape here and I'm gonna put it on its own layer. So what I'm trying to say is, let's say you're in a complicated, you don't have to imitate this, guys, just watch. If you had a multiple layer document and then you used a mask on it, something nasty happens that I just want you to be prepared for. So I've got objects on a bunch of different layers right now. Now, what would happen if I actually put a mask over all of it? So this is something people want to do, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want you to see what it costs, so to speak. I'm making a mask the size of the stage. And now I'm going to select everything that I want in the mask. Let me zoom out a little bit. Don't want this guy, so I'm going to move him over. I want all of this stuff. Object, clipping mask, make. The only problem is going to be on the layer palette. As soon as I made the mask, it did what I wanted, but look, they all went to one layer. All right, so what's the moral of the story? Don't get crazy with masks. You know, a lot of your work's really complicated. You can't afford to give up your layers, right? This is kind of nasty. So use your mask thoughtfully when it seems like the right time for a mask. You know what I mean? But again, if you've got complicated layers, I would probably try to work around it.
Is it okay if for that issue specifically, when we're working on it, we just do trim view and then like once it turns in, it cuts it off for us?
I love that idea. And you know, one thing that changes, trim view didn't used to exist. And I'm not even talking ancient history, a year or two ago. And people were doing the weirdest ways. I've seen some of you guys do it. They match the color of the outside of the stage and put big gray boxes around the stage. Clever. I used to do that. But now we have trim view, so I want to mention what Adi's talking about if anyone hasn't seen it. So let me undo this because this is problematic, right? So this is where I was before. Everybody's back on their layers. I just did Command Z. Under the View menu, there's this option here called Trim View. And it hides everything off stage. Sometimes I'm lost. Hey, where's that thing I put off stage? I'll come back to the View menu, and I'm using this option on top. View using CPU. So Trim View hides everything off stage. My computer's been complaining about that feature quite a bit. So give me a second while I try to get everything back.
I had no idea that existed, and I've just been using the navigation to like see how my projects like would look without.
Yeah, I understand that. You know, I have to admit, I still have some issues. I just, I'm trying to get out of trim view here. There we go. There we go. Yeah, it's great. And I have to say, like, a lot of Adobe products needed this feature and didn't have it. They just added it to Adobe Animate. Don't really remember Photoshop, whether it's got it or not. But the only thing I want to say to all of you is that doesn't affect how the output file looks. And there's a lot of different ways to make a JPEG or a GIF or a PDF, you know, that they're not necessarily going to respect trim view, but in most of those cases, they'll only make an image out of the stage anyway, the document. So trim view is really for us as artists, just to see what the audience is going to see. So listen, I want to back up though, that because I just want to mention this and then we'll move on. This object here is a little bit more typical of why people do this stuff. You know, this has nothing to do with the edge of the document. This is just something that I want. You know, so imagine I had this idea. Give me a second, rig something up. You know, maybe the whole idea is a page where it's going to be, sorry, a little sloppy today. You know, maybe the whole idea is I'm going to have icons here that each represent something. You know, so this is a little umbrella in there, and it's about the weather, about the stock market. This is going to be a picture of the White House. It's going to be about politics. You know, so if I was going to lay something like that out, maybe there's going to be a little headline next to it and a paragraph, headline, paragraph. This look is cool. You know, I don't know about these huge strokes that I've got over here. You know, but the look is cool, and I could do that with any kind of simple drawing in there, and I would like this to be on one layer. That one's not a problem. All right. Any more questions about clipping masks? It's pretty simple. The only technique for today, one technique for a change, just because we have the time, it'll make the next week's a little easier. All right, everybody. I want to introduce to you what is I want to be blunt, my favorite project. You know, if I was taking this class instead of being the teacher, I'd be waiting all semester just for this one particular project, right? And it's called Reimagined Cities. So bear with me for a minute. I'm going to show you a few of these and talk up what the requirements are. But I want to say something. The way our department works, everyone teaching vector graphics, this class, it gets a list of requirements. You know, these are techniques you have to cover. These are the 4 main projects, and then you're allowed to improvise, you know, on those projects. The teachers bring to the table what they think has the most value, right? So your peers at school who are in other teachers' vector graphics class, they're getting a last final assignment, similar goals as mine, but not exactly the same. We're the only ones, what is today, Thursday? And my Monday group is going to be doing the same, so I may show you some of theirs also. Let's look first, right? That's would be a better way to get the hang of this. Okay. All right, so here is a very lengthy box that just goes into a bunch of detail, and as boring as it is, you would be wise to read the entire thing. Right now, conversationally, I'm going to tell you what's important. But what I always do for you guys is this, whenever there's a new project, is I include one of these. For examples, click here. I'm going to do that. It's a large file, right? So depending on your internet speed, it may take a while to actually load. There's maybe a dozen samples. All right. Now, this is intentionally dark image. I hope everybody's seeing it okay on their screen. All right. So what's going on here? All right, first step, everybody in here is going to pick a city. Now I'm open-minded to other types of place, a special island, a special town, right? I'm focusing on cities though, right? Now, what you're going to do is when you pick that city, you're going to research it so that you get an idea of its flavor. So be very clear what I'm saying here. What is different about this city? What's different about, say, New York City than Paris? You know, for example, what's different about New York City than Rome, right? And then you think about it. And depending on how you see that city, I want you to reimagine the city. Now, what does that even mean? What does it even mean to reimagine a city? So I had one student, he loved New York, but he liked to criticize it. And he was criticizing seedy New York, dark New York. The drug addict is on the floor and you're not sure he's safe. And do I give him money? Do I not? And that side of New York, the messy, dark side. So he reimagined New York City completely like that, as this dark, dark place, all involved with crime and addiction and that stuff. Now, other people come to New York, and this is for real. Like a lot of you guys are from out of town, but you're New Yorkers now. But maybe your town, family comes and they want to go to Broadway. So they go to Broadway, they see people tap dancing and guys with hats and canes and everyone's singing. And they have this image of New York, that's New York. New York is like a Broadway show. Wouldn't that be hilarious if we were all here dressed like it was a Broadway show? And we could only sing every time we would talk? What would the streets look like if they looked like a Broadway play? That's reimagining New York. So this particular piece that we're looking at, this guy's seeing New York as like the end of New York, a place that's been done in. I guess he wasn't feeling too great about whatever challenges we have here in this city. So the buildings themselves are falling apart. Statue of Liberty's lost her body and there's rubble all over the floor. A lot of work. It's also very moody lighting. Probably used a lot of blending modes. All right, let's go on. Oh, yes, by the way, there is a requirement that you mention the place in the image. So here we've got Havana, right? The most famous part of Cuba, right? And you see it says Havana on the floor. So we'll be doing some typography, a little bit of typography together, right? But if you notice here, these are the kind of buildings that have an antique feeling, as well as an openly antique car. Cuba's famous for keeping that old stuff alive. It's also got some bright colors and music in the distance, suggesting, because that's the image of Cuba that a lot of people have. I want to point out, though, there's also a missile background there with a Russian, with a Soviet icon, because Cuba is a communist country, and they had a strong relationship with Soviet Russia when it was still a country. And we had a lot of famous problems, a missile crisis with them. So all these references to Cuba. Now, by the way, before we even go further, these illustration styles look completely different. Neither one of them was wildly rendered like what we just did, right? They weren't particularly simple like a lot of the first projects. They're artists finding their own way. All right, let's go on. Here's another New York one. This is a really crazy one. And the student decided to, on their own, give me 1 second here. I just want to zoom out a little. The student wanted to make it look like part of a website, so they got a search box on top. I didn't really find that necessary, but I didn't mind it. This is just weird. We're looking at New York City from under the floor. This student had a hell of a lot of talent, and this image just, I find it positively scary. I wouldn't really want to draw this. But it's an odd image. Conceptually, I don't have much to say about it. I just wanted to show it to you because it's so unique. Let me move on. This is very curious that the person chose Las Vegas. Las Vegas is in Nevada, right? And give me 1 second, let me make this a little bit bigger. So Nevada is famous for UFO claims. Admittedly, the state of Nevada has Roswell in it. Some of you guys heard of Roswell. A lot of people believe that the government found a UFO there and hid it. And they're kind of taking this UFO idea and bringing it into Las Vegas. And I love the look of it. The colors are beautiful. It's very professional and fun to look at. And I did indeed give it an A. But, I do have one problem with it, though. You think of Vegas, you think of gambling. How does a person talk about Las Vegas without talking about gambling? So in a sense, this could have been in Roswell, the place that has all the UFO, controversy about it, not in Vegas. So I look at this, it's like, how much Vegas is there really? I mean, this is an amusement park kind of feature. but I don't see a single reference to gambling. So as much as I love the way it looks and the fun idea, it really didn't make use of Vegas. It doesn't really particularly make sense that it's Vegas specifically. I still gave
It's
it an
not on
A.
Earth. There's Earth in the background.
And there's Earth in the background, which, by the way, is okay because I am asking you to reimagine, right? That's very important that you sink your teeth into that. I don't want someone to show me the city the way it is. That's nice, but it's not the assignment. On the other hand, I don't want you to forget the city you chose. Like, why did he choose this city? I love it. Really, I do. And I don't mind the crazy idea of treating Vegas like a planet. I haven't been there, but that's the way I imagine it. I mean, really, New Yorkers think of New York like a planet or a country at the very least. So it's a reimagining. I'm okay with that part of it. This one here looks very quite much like an ad, very openly an ad for like a tourist ad for Germany. Let me just back off of this for a minute. Having some zooming issues today for some reason. And it's interesting. So they went with a couple of things, the kind of architecture that Germany's famous for. We've got a windmill. A lot of Northern Europe may share some of this stuff. Very German looking to me. However, they've got the beer there, clearly using skills they learned in Project 3 that we just finished. This heavily rendered gradient beer. So it's all sitting, the city is sitting inside of a beer mug, including a map with areas. This is really one of my absolute favorites. This one I just personally love it. And when so San Francisco, a famous city. I've not been to. I'm just dying to see San Francisco. Seems so cool to me. But it's also famous for earthquakes, and anyone who moves there knows that there's a risk of an earthquake. And in the past there's been some nasty ones. So this student, I happen to remember working with this student on this. She could just not figure out how to make that bridge look broken or what to do with the houses. And by the end of the project, she nailed it. So what she did was drew the bridge first just to get the bridge down, and then started rethinking it to figure out how to break it. And the hole in the ground, when you look at it, is actually fairly simple. It's a shape with a gradient in it. It's got some plants kind of going over the edge, which I think works really well. And they took these houses, which are largely copies of each other, that have been recolored, and took the last one and tilted it and pulled off some of its parts. And it's like a postcard for San Francisco that is not going to help their tourism industry at all. But it's fun, it's beautiful, it's clear, it's professional. And most importantly, it's original. So guys, listen, let me just throw that in for a minute. I'm so concerned with your work being original. In this class, I don't believe anyone has ever overly borrowed anything. Now, I don't always know. Every now and then someone thinks it's okay, and it's not. It's theft. So it takes a little while to get to know what you can borrow and what you can't. Photo of a house? Okay, that's always safe. Drawing of a house? That's never safe. Sculpture of an area? That's pretty safe. Painting of it? That's not safe. Make sure the ideas are yours. Here we have another disaster. They're just fun to draw. But I'm impressed, man. Look at the water. The water's just hard to do. It's hard to do in Illustrator. It's hard to do anywhere. But here we've got New Orleans with its famous Bourbon Street. And this might have been a little while after Katrina, if any of you remember Hurricane Katrina. We've had a number of famous hurricanes in the last few years. And this looks just like New Orleans, these kinds of balconies and old style Southern homes. And in the water is all kinds of different things flowing. Notice these are Mardi Gras beads, a very famous event that happens there. And the artist thoughtfully laid the Mardi Gras beads over the lamppost, as well as fireworks, which they'd have on that famous holiday. I just think is really original. Also, this artist spent a lot of time with brushstrokes, something that I really want to focus on in the next couple of weeks, because we've not been talking about strokes very much. Seoul, Korea, apparently this fellow Rex comes from there. And he was saying that most of the vehicles on the street are delivery guys. They're like constantly delivering food. So in his mind, the entire city is just taken over by food delivery. So I am, anyone from this area, I'm hoping might recognize this symbol, unless it's a Pepsi symbol, famous soda maybe there. Supplying. I think it's a beautiful drawing. Notice how he copied the bike rider over numerous times. But he's showing us the typical architecture of the area, traditional and modern, and even give me some typography. He's beautiful, very, very professional. You wouldn't flinch at all if you saw this in a magazine that was about the overwhelming traffic caused by food delivery. I gotta say, I almost hid this one at the last minute, because this artist, again, they kind of broke some rules. Give me a second there, we go. And the only reason that I accepted it, again, as I said twice today, the rules were broken so well. So they have this image of New York City as of the trash, not a wildly clean city, and it really depends where you are. You're in a rich neighborhood, they clean more. That just sucks. Wherever you're in Manhattan, they just can't keep up with the garbage. So this person here has got their tough black boots on. They're like Doc Martens or something like that. And they're standing on burnt cigarettes, beautifully rendered cigarettes, chewing gum too, it looks like. Some graffiti on the floor, some old lottery tickets, banana with a peel underneath it. And they're just talking about reimagining the city as it's dominated by garbage. You can say it's so professional and so tight. Really, I couldn't argue with it. It isn't really a landscape, though. So it's not what I was looking for, but it did satisfy so many of the requirements and even surpass them that I was pleased to accept it. I just want to walk you through these and then see if there are questions. I'm sorry these are so close. The way I make these don't give me a margin option. I'm having they seem to behave differently too whenever I open them. This one here says Fujian on it. It's not a place that I'm familiar with, clearly in Asia. Does anybody know where that is, Fujian? You can turn on your mic if you know.
It's China.
It's in China. And that, makes, sense. The Buddha was from India, but got popular in China before it spread around the rest of Asia. So that's kind of interesting. We've got this architectural image. This is a very complex image. My only resistance to it is it feels cluttered in certain areas and it's a little hard to make out. But I still think it's very impressive. It's got famous clouds in their landscape. I want to move on to this one, though, because it strikes me as particularly smart. This student came from Nebraska and fell in love with New York. And she was telling me while she was working on this that she's got this kind of dual identity now. She's a bit of a country girl from hometown America, out west. But in her mind, she's also a New Yorker. I love the Statue of Liberty, her reinvented Statue of Liberty. It's got a cow merged with a famous sculpture, but it's holding a football. I guess they take football very seriously there. Corn stalks behind her, big player in Nebraska, rather than the torch. The sculpture is holding a corn cob, which is pretty great. And so she's mixing her view of her old town with some elements from the city. It's just beautiful sense of color. Probably a lot of blending modes going on. I want to show you this. This is, succinct. It just gets to the point. I really don't like that it says Beijing in such small letters on the chopsticks, especially since the background is a little less than satisfying. I think they could have used Beijing just maybe going right behind the bowl. But the bowl is terrific, and it's, the world knows China through its food. The country's huge, produce so many amazing things. But the one thing everybody knows is Chinese food, so she took Beijing and put it inside of a bowl to eat. Really nicely done. Oh, this one I was starting to tell you about before. This fella, talented guy, definitely loves to think for himself. To satisfy the landscape requirement, he put New York inside of a snow globe. But he's focusing on the tile walls that you'd see in a beat up subway. And so you can see the tiles are falling off and it looks pretty bad. And this is like a crack pipe. This used to be a bigger problem in the city than it is now, but I guess he's kind of flashing on the past. So we've got this drug pipe on this wall that's falling apart in a kind of dismal city in a snow globe. You know, snow globes are there as these goofy tourist gifts, right? And they usually idealize a place. In this place, this is far from ideal. It's got darker vision. All right. So notice how each one looks completely different. There is no stylistic pattern at all, right? They anywhere from somewhat painterly, somewhat cartoony, mixes of styles. The main thing is it all starts with concept. So before we go into any details, does anybody have any questions about the project?
When you say reimagine,
I want to.
Oh, sorry. Oh, when you say reimagine, do you mean like, I guess, highlighting like a certain part of it or like a characteristic that represents it?
That's an excellent question. So this is what I'm after. I want enough in the image so that it is that city, you know, so that it is. And even if you're using cliches, you know, I don't, the cliches in New York, but you know, in France, do they all wear berets? No, I don't think so, but that's okay. Are they all artists? Okay. Does every image of France have to have the Eiffel Tower in it? Does every image of New York have to have the Statue of Liberty? Doesn't, but it might be helpful for this project because you now about reimagining, right? I would like you to start by spinning off of something that is in the nature of that place, but you don't have to limit yourself to it. Like, frankly, if UFOs landed in New York City, right, and what would the city look like a few months later? Well, you know, that would depend on. Looks like everybody froze. Are you guys hearing me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can? Because everybody froze. I just want to make sure. I'm not quite sure. It could just be on my end. How many guys are hearing me? Can you give me a thumbs up just so I know?
Some of your audio just cuts out every once in a while, so it might.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's why I repeat myself partly for that. So I'm looking for a combination of blunt fantasy and some kind of response to that place. You know, for example, everyone knows a little bit about Rome, right? The famous part of Italy, you know, all these famous artists were focused there. The Vatican is roughly there, right? So the Pope and the heart of Catholicism and all of that. So let's say my fantasy part wanted spaceships to land in Rome. You know, what would they do? Would they eat pizza the whole time they were there? So that in some way would combine something about the character of a place or the way it's thought around the world with my own fantasy. So the level of reimagining is kind of up to you. If you want to keep it close, hardly reimagine, just a few things that take it into a slightly more fantastic place, I suppose that's okay. If you want to get really wild and weird, that's okay too. But I just want you to keep your eye on that place. What does that place have to do with it? Why did you choose that place instead of a different place? Fantasy's great. Relevant fantasy is even better. But why are you choosing this particular place to reimagine? So what I don't want is a picture of New York that looks just like New York with nothing unusual about it. You know, it looks just like another tourist ad. You know, it's got to go a step beyond that. You know, if it is about Broadway, I was saying earlier, which is about plays, what would you do? I had a student who actually did that, and they moved the play to the street. They had a couple people dancing on the street, a big curtain over one of the buildings. And that was a reimagining based on the city. So let's take a look at the handout, and maybe that'll stimulate more questions. And I would like to let you guys out a little early today if I can. All right, so let me get to the handout. Okay, this is the last project, right? So it is the grand finale. You really want to make a statement here. I have not really let your imaginations loose. And here I'm really trying to provoke an imaginative response from you, creative response. Okay, So you're going to illustrate the reimagined city based on real world research. So please choose a place you know something about or place you'd like to know something about. You know, what do people think of when they think of why is San Francisco different than New York? Like, how do you imagine them being different? You know, or other countries entirely. All right, so it begins with real world research, but it expands on that personality of that specific city. So your work should show drawing principles, including perspective, but I don't want you to be limited to any of the things you learned. You know, this is a playful project. I am going to be looking for passion. I am going to be looking for work. I'm going to be looking for conviction. You know, I want something stimulating. That's what we do as artists. We make things have impact. So anything that's just la-di-da, I'm going to have a la-di-da reaction. And you know, you've seen it on each other's work when something looked heartless. Boy, that sounded mean. Something looked not heartfelt, right? So you want to bring something to the table, like most of you generally do. This is the most openly creative project this semester. You really want to be there in terms of the subject and your thinking as well as how you express it with your techniques. All right, so you select a city, you analyze it, and you gather significant photographs. So let's stop for a minute. I want you to really hear me out on this. All illustrators collect research before they get started. It's rare that someone draws right out of their head. You're reading Marvel comics and it's all Spider-Man comics. You think those guys are just making those buildings up? There's no doubt. They have photos of Manhattan all over the place. You know, he lives in the city and they use the city. So you're going to need to collect stuff. So for example, if I'm doing New York City and I want to use a hot dog stand as part of it, I'm probably going to get a photo of somebody at a hot dog stand. It's easy to find on Google. You know, if I also want to say it's someone getting mugged at a hot dog stand, I could make up the mugger or I could find a photograph. Again, it has to be photographic elements or you could take your own pictures. I don't want you basing anything on someone else's artwork at all, even a little. But I might need some of those elements. Do I need a particular building? Do I need to see the new Freedom Tower? You know, what do I need? So what you're going to do by next week is very important. You're going to pick the city. You're going to start to think about it. And you're going to gather photographic references to help. Whatever you need. You might need 5, you might need 20. I gather a lot of photo references. I mean, I could show you what one of my folders look like before I actually do an illustration. You know, and they're all kinds of stuff. So you need an animal in there, you know, unless you're an expert at that animal, you probably need a photo of it, right? Just resources. By the way, some of you may choose to use file menu place for some stuff. Others aren't going to use file menu place at all. This project is up to you how you go about it. But you're often going to need something at least to look at, you know, like having a model in class, right? All right. So for next week, you must pick the city, think it through, right? And then I want you to gather significant photographs, right, to help. This is for you. And here are the questions you should ask. What is it about this city that makes it different? What is the essence of the difference? Is San Francisco filled with hippies? Is New York filled with, I don't know what, cafes? Is everybody wearing a wool hat? Do we all have pierced noses and tattoos? You know, I don't know. That is one of the images of New York, right? We're all in a cafe and we all look like that and we only wear black. I don't know. What are you going to choose to emphasize though? Illuminate, exaggerate. Exaggeration may be a big part of this. But really, what transformation are you going to make? You know, what's different about your version of the city is also very important. What's fantastic? What's different? So about the photographic sources, what do you need? Do you need landmarks? You know, do I need the Brooklyn Bridge? Do I need local people, food? What else helps me make my point? I want you to take those photos, and this is very important to me. I want you to gather them, download them, however you do it, get them into one folder for this project. So all the stuff you need. I don't want them sitting on your phone that is not good enough, okay? So I really want all the stuff in a folder. I see a lot of people's cameras went off, so I'm thinking some of you can't hear me right now and some can.
I
Are
can
you
see
guys all?
everyone's cameras on.
I'm good. All right, because you know a lot of people always have their cameras on, suddenly disappeared. They may have passed out. How you doing, Gabriella? You all right? Hello. I'm singing a lullaby for some people. All right, in any case, gather your photos into a folder that you could keep, have immediate access. I'm very likely to ask to see it. I may not. You want to be ready, right? This is going to be a lot of work. I don't think it's going to be as much work as the last project. It's going to be more thinking. It's hard to say. It really depends on how you go about it. All right. This is something that I definitely need from you by next week. I want you to use your photos, your imagination, all of it to hand sketch 2 to 3 versions. So when I say hand sketch, I really mean it. You know, I've been asking you that all semester, really. Draw it. Pencils, whatever you like to draw with, right? I'm not looking for finished stuff right away. It'd be a mistake to just start, right? Do you want to do 2 or 3 versions to think? Does it feel like that place? Is it interesting? Did I change it in some way that's meaningful before you even get started? So this week's going to be devoted to pre-production, thinking, gathering photographic resources, and doing a few sketched versions. So I don't need them to be polished. I just need them to be clear enough that we could talk, given the opportunity. So make your sketch cityscape into something more than expect. It's a fresh invention, a new way of seeing. Here's your numbers. The width is 14. I'm looking for landscape. If you really want it to be vertical, I'll accept the same numbers, you know, reversed. So this is a legal size page. I want you to honor the margin completely this time. Unless you have a really good reason to go over the margin, stay inside of it. Keep it clean. I want people to be used to that limitation because it's common. All right, so let's just break this down. Here's the list for next class. So this you want to be very clear about. Prepare the folder with the research images. You're not going to hand that in. You're going to keep it on your end. So we're in Zoom. If you need to show me anything or I ask to see it, you'll have it available. So this is just you collected, you know, photos and whatever resources may be helpful. Notice I made this as clear as I could. Prepare the 2 to 3 original, thoughtful, highly developed sketches, right? I don't need them fancy. I say highly developed, not a scribble. I want it to be clear so you're ready to actually use that because the following week, obviously, we're moving into Illustrator, right? Now about the sketches, this is new. I've never done this before. You're the first group. Never taught this subject in Zoom, though I've taught others. So I wanted all to be available next week, right? Your folder with just collected stuff and the sketches, right? Hear about the sketches. I want you to photograph them. So if you got 2, I'll take 2, unless you want to get them somehow in one photo. It depends how you treat it, right? 2 or 3. I want the sketches named just like this. And you notice it's very similar to what you got used to. Just here it says sketch 1. So if you are going to give me more than one, I'll sort alphabetically. I'll see all of yours together. And I'll see sketch 2. Sketch 3 if you need to. And then I want you to take those sketches and upload them. So after class today, I'm going to move all this project into a separate folder. That means our Google Drive is going to be nice and available. You're just going to drop those photographed sketches in Google Drive. So the only thing you're going to put in Google Drive is going to be photos of your sketches or scans. The photos you'll have on your end. Come on, ask me a question, somebody.
Will I be able to run my idea by you after class?
Yeah, sure enough. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me? No? So folks, she's trying to get outside. My cat was appealing for an exit. Okay, excuse me. So guys, listen, I'm going to wrap it up a little early. I want to say a couple things. Most of this class completely rocked that last project. Really, it was stunning. A couple of you didn't, but you may have rocked other projects, and that's life, right? The door is still open to revisions, right? work that hasn't been handed to me at all, you better send me a really convincing email about why I should still accept it. It's very hard to pass my class missing even one because there's only 4 projects. You know, they're large, but there's only 4, right? So please don't snooze on it. If you're afraid something went wrong, go take a look at Blackboard in your own time. Send me an email. I'll do my best to get back to you sooner than later. I'm not so good at that, but I try, right? And there you have it. Folks, have a little bit of fun with this last project. A lot of my students get stuck on this one because it's too free. They're like, wait, I need more instructions, but no, you don't. You're all creative thinkers, and you've proven it already. So this is a chance to really stretch out, right? All right, no last questions from me? All right, folks, in that case, I am going to say goodbye for now. Get on those sketches, get on that research, think about it, see what you can come up with. I hope you find something you're excited about. And I want to thank you all for being so focused. Talented too. See you all next week.
Thank you,
Robin,
Professor.
hang out, okay? Anyone else who wants to talk to me, you can stick around. Also, everybody else, I'll see you all. Pleasure. Pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good one.
No, you too. You too. Thank you.
Thank
So I'm
you.
just waiting for the room to empty out. If Leah passed out.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you like Robin, but she can go first.
Okay, Robin.
Thank you. So I was thinking of doing, I'm probably gonna butcher like how to say it, Venus.
Hey, you know something, Robin? Can you hold your thought? I think I want to stop the recording.
Oh.
Just give me 1 minute there. Goodbye, YouTube.